going to be recording it right now. So what happens in recording is if you talk, you're going to be recorded. I know you might be uncomfortable. We don't even know what you're going to be doing during that time. So make sure if you do not want to be recorded, you are muted, your video is off, or if you want your video to be on, we do like to see your faces. And also making sure that the whole time we are being kind. So using the chat box, or if you would like to unmute yourself, we would like to ask you, how are you celebrating Filipino American History Month today? If this is your first time hearing it, what makes you proud of being Filipino? We'll spend a couple of minutes over
I think she froze.
Froze a little bit. Nikko, you froze. Oh,
There you are.
there you are.
Sorry. Okay, there's gonna be times where my internet will have its own little mind of its own and interrupt me. Um, so yes. Um, in terms of celebrating, so we're going back into check-in. In terms of how are you celebrating Filipino American History Month, I will be looking at some responses that we got today. How I'm celebrating Filipino American History Month is spending it here with y'all, existing, loving myself as being Filipino as I am, learning so many things about history, celebrities. If y'all seen the new Disney trailer that came out,
I think she froze again. Did she freeze again?
Yes. I think she.
Good afternoon,
oh,
everyone.
Okay,
Hey,
she's back.
Nikko.
hello, I'm back. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Again, my internet has a mind of its own. Cool,
Hello.
cool, cool. Hello. So, let us know how you're celebrating Filipino American History Month. Go, and also if this is your first time, make sure if you haven't heard of Filipino American History Month or FAM, what makes you proud of being Filipino? Yes, yes, Dr. Navarro. What Filipino movie are we watching tonight? Can I join? Hello. Am I muted again?
No, you're not. Yeah, no, I don't know what's. I'm just gonna check out and see what's available. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. So thank you all for checking in. We're also going to be moving on a little bit. And if this is your first time, and this was maybe for everyone, could be your first event celebrating fam. So we got a little sign in. I said it earlier. Go ahead and go to tinyurl.com/FAMHRC sign in. Just so for everyone to know, this is your raffle ticket. We are giving out a prize at the end of this workshop. So, and this will be up everywhere. It will be in the chat. It will be presented by my co-host. Cool. So, we are gathered here today by PVFAA, FAMHRC, and APCTC. What do they stand for? The first one is Paris Valley Filipino American Association. The second one in the middle, this little purple one doodad right here, it is Filipino American Mental Health Resource Center. And the last beautiful brown one over here is Asian Pacific uh, Counseling and Therapy
Treatment.
Center. Got it. We are all organizations located here in the Inland Empire / Riverside. And all of our core team today has been helping and supporting our lovely Desiree and Dr. Navarro into being our presenters for today. So just a little explanation of our organizations. PVFA is a nonprofit organization. They promote Their mission is to promote, preserve, and foster the rich Filipino culture and heritage to the diverse residents in this community. In our community, we have a lot of Filipinos out here. Their goal is to engage and develop the Filipino American youth community through various activities from civic responsibilities to community service. So getting out the vote counts as one of them, and primarily to develop the Phil-Am youth leadership, potential skills, and values formation. The next one, Filipino American Mental Health Resource Center, or Resource Center, if you hear from many of the core team, is also a nonprofit that offers outreach services to the Filipino American communities in Paris and surrounding cities. So we're talking about Temecula, Marietta, Menifee, Hemet, etc. They're here to educate, support, and connect with Filipino Americans experiencing emotional and mental health problems with the county, so Riverside. We're here to help them make sure we're meeting their needs. Sometimes the Riverside doesn't know that, we got needs. Sometimes they accidentally neglect us, sometimes. So some of the things that we offer is monthly mental health support groups, information and education regarding mental health treatment and recovery, and quarterly mental health community seminars and workshops on mental health awareness and stigma. Our last but definitely not least is the Asian Pacific Counseling and Treatment Center. This is also our third nonprofit organization. It is a division of the Special Services for Group Inc., SSG. They take a multidisciplinary and culturally sensitive approach to address the psychological and social needs of their clients. If you hear a helicopter, I don't know why that's out there, but they're out there. Sorry. Some of the services they offer is assessment and diagnosis, individual, group, and family counseling, and community education and workshops. So, I introduced a lot of organizations, but we would love for you to meet who from there is here with us today. So we are the core team. So we got Mila Banks. She is a part of PVVA and FAMHRC. She is my boss. She is the program coordinator of the Resource Center and the active member of AATF. She was born and raised in the Philippines. She graduated from the University of Phoenix with her master's in education, and she was a previous chairperson of PVFA. Can we just say powerful? What? That's my boss. She didn't pay me a lot for this. I had naturally hype her up sometimes, or I'd hype out anyone. Next up, we have Dr.
Ernalyn. Yeah.
Ernalyn, thanks. I'm like getting tongue-tied. I'm so sorry. We have next is Dr. Ernalyn Navarro. She is with a DM, LSCW, and a BCC. She also works with she is a partner with us. She's a guest with us. She was also born and raised in the Philippines and migrated to the United States at age 14. Her education and training includes graduating from the University of Irvine with a BA in social ecology. It goes on. I'm also UCI alum. She also was served as a president of Kababayan. She has a master's in social work from University of Southern California. Go Trojans. She also has her doctorate of management from the University of Phoenix. I do not know their mascot. She is also a licensed clinical social worker. She is also a certified community resilience model teacher, and she's also a certified Daring Way facilitator. Her work experiences include working as a manager of the community program and service at the St. Mary Health Center in Apple Valley. She is also serves as an adjunct professor at USC School of Social Work. She is also a board certified coach, which is a private practice as a leadership coach and an organization development consultant. Her interests and hobbies includes volunteer work for several nonprofit organizations. She loves to travel. She travels to Asia, Australia, Europe, Caribbean, North and South America, and she does arts and craft, photography, scrapbooking, music, and reading. Look at her repping USC, all the red and yellow. Like, damn. Next, we have Nicole Dumaginin. She is a part of APCTC. She is also a part of CMHP. She has been a community mental health promoter for Filipinos in Riverside County. She was also raised in Inland Empire. She's graduated USC. Oh wow, look at that, another Trojan with her Master's of Science in Global Medicine. She is also a former community health worker for 2 years in the Cordillera region of the Philippines. She came back from the Philippines to the Inland Empire, and now she's working with APCTC. And she is also a new mom of a 1-year-old named Jaden. Jaden is really funny to look at during our meetings. Not funny to look like at. Sorry, Jaden's adorable. While her partner is an NGO worker with urban poor communities in the Philippines. Sorry, Nicole. I love Jaden. Jaden's cute. Next, we have Frances. She's also a part of KITE or KITE, and also APCTC. She is a graduate from the University of California, Riverside. Go Highlanders. She obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology last year in June 2019. She now works at APCTC as a parent and family specialist and a mental health promoter. She migrated here from the Philippines to the US at 6 years old and has lived in Riverside ever since. Her passion for mental health advocacy began in high school, and she wants to keep working to destigmatize mental health discussions in API communities. She has experienced firsthand what it's like to deal with mental health and that the negative ways it perceives in API families and how these perceptions can sometimes lead to toxic relationships. And this is why it's her goal to bring families closer together and raise awareness on such topics. In her free time, she also enjoys going through social media, getting dubs on Fortnite, watching anime and Korean dramas, and dancing as she's involved in the hip hop community. Look at that. Look at her. It's like, she's so pretty. What? She works with us. Next, we have Ellen Agonyo. She's also
Gonoy.
Agoino. Sorry. I'm not. I. Can you repeat it one more time for me so I don't get it wrong?
Ogonoy.
Ogonoy. My bad. She is a part of the Resource Center. She's also a graduate of UCR, Go Highlanders. She has attained her BA in Sociology and a minor in Education in June 2020. She's a former member of UCR Katipunan PSO, Filipino Student Organization. She is currently an outreach worker with me. Her passion for mental health advocacy and education began in high school after dealing with her own mental health and after a loss of a friend to a suicide back in 2012. Became a member of the Suicide Prevention Resource Center in high school from 2012 to 2013. She's in the process of applying for graduate school and her plans to become a future elementary school teacher. In her free time, she enjoys listening to music. She is a big fan of Ariana Grande, spending time with her family and partner, watching Disney Plus, and using her bullet journal. I think we're having a pattern of two people coming from like the same university. I don't know if y'all see it. I see it. And next and lastly, not least, it is your MC, your girl. My name is Nikko Dungo. Sometimes you're going to hear me go as Nicole, but there's already a Nicole here. So I am using Nikko to make things clear. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a part of the Resource Center. I'm a second generation Filipino American, Ilocana, and Kapapangang. I'm born in Daly City, NorCal, but raised in Menifee, SoCal. Graduated UCI 2020 with a BA in Public Health Policy with minors in Asian American Studies and Gender and Sexuality Studies. I aspire to be a researcher and educator. Some of my involvements are at UC Davis, SC PASA, PhilPro, Kababayan, UCI, the Filipino American Public Health Conference, and a lot of podcasts. I am also an amateur foodie. I will be your friend if you pay for my food or coffee, guaranteed. And I watch anime and cartoons in my downtime, but in my highest opinion, I just think they're just better storytellers. So that's who we are. That's what we have on panel. Thank you and so we're gonna be moving on to our beautiful, beautiful presenter. Desiree, can you take it away from us? I'll go ahead and have you share screen.
Desiree, tell us a little bit about yourself before you do your presentation.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Desiree. I see a lot of my family and friends. So great to see you and everyone else who came to join us. I'm a junior in high school. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm honestly both excited and nervous right now. Glad you guys came here. And I guess, see, a little fun fact about myself. I really love Disney. I really love the arts. I love watching films most of all. and I'm a huge activist, especially for Filipinx and Black unity, which we'll get into today. So I'm gonna screen share. I figured out how to do this. Okay.
While we're here, can we give it up for Desiree? Like, can we give it up for her? Can we get some claps and going things on in the chat for her? Whoa, let's go.
Pulling everything up. Can you guys see my screen? I'm gonna put in present mode.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, okay. So it's loading. So once again, hello again. I'm Desiree Perez, and we're going to jump into I don't want to say it's a controversial topic, but I know for many people they're on different sides of this. But we're going to be talking about Filipinx Black allyship and mental health, and how they correlate, and all this beautiful stuff. So here are a few key concepts that we will be touching. Allyship, of course, mental health, reflection, communication, and our culture. Although these are kind of very different subtopics, they will come together and relate to each other so we can get a better understanding of change and how we need to change for our community. So first and foremost, happy Filipinx American History Month. As our warm-up question, we asked, how are you guys been celebrating? I know I mentioned I was celebrating by doing this workshop, but also just like research in general besides this. So if you don't really know why we commemorate Filipinx American History Month in October, Filipinx in America actually had an invisible history from 1763 to 1963. However, we were actually the first Asian American community to visit America. And with this month, we not only look back at our history, but we take time to reflect on what a beautiful culture we have. So you guys might be wondering what Filipinx means, or you might already know. So the reason why I use Filipinx instead of Filipino or Filipina is that it's a very gender inclusive term, because many people in our community don't feel that they fall in Filipino or Filipina. However, Filipinx is one of the many terms individuals in our community use to identify with. So as I mentioned before, we have Filipino, Filipina, we have Philippine with the at sign, which is more used during text. Filipino, because our native alphabet does not have an F in it, and Pinoy, which mostly describes Filipinx who immigrated here. So the first thing I want to do is ask a question, and I really want you guys to unmute yourselves and answer this, or you just type in the chat, what is one way you've participated in allyship, especially since during quarantine, we have more time to kind of participate, whether it's via online or being able to go to a protest. So please answer. I see my family. So please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So one way that I've participated in the allyship, I've seen a lot of posts on Instagram recently, like, oh, click this card to learn more about this issue. And specifically with the Black Lives Matters movement, I've had a lot of resources accessible to me, like signing petitions and resources such as this workshop, just like providing information. So that's how I've participated recently.
Thank you for sharing, Tiana. Good stuff. I've also been doing the same thing, especially via social media. I'm going to read Jessie's comment in the chat. She said, the best thing I could do right now is actively sign petitions, continually educating myself on issues, and I have been ordering food from local Black-owned businesses. Yes, those are also great things. I'm glad that we all have a way that we've participated in allyship. Even if you haven't shared, I'm sure you've done your best in either educating yourself or anything. So now let's get on to the meat of the presentation. So, allyship. Allyship is the practice of advocating social justice, inclusion, and human rights to advance the interests of oppressed groups. So, what is an ally and what does it mean to be one? I'm going to use the Google definition, which is one that is associated with another as a helper, especially during an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle. So, to summarize that, it is just standing in solidarity with the community, but it's important to note that it is far more complex than just simply being a helper. In order to understand allyship, especially from a Filipinx point of view, we must look back into our history. So in history class, we typically don't learn about BIPOC allyships, let alone our own cultural history themselves. I believe during like my time in high school or middle school, the only time we've ever mentioned the Philippines was during colonization. And there's so much more about the Philippines it's definitely more than just a country that's been colonized. So in order to give us a deeper insight on our allyships and the importance of unity, we must look back at our history. And additionally, within this, we break down internalized stigmas within our culture. So these are two events, and I have one more that highlights the history. So multiracial Black Filipinx families have existed for a very long time in our community. So in the late 1700s, the first Filipinx American community, which settled in Louisiana, was actually a mix of Black and Filipinx families because Manila men jumped ships to escape Spanish galleons. And when they would jump ship, they ended up in places where they had a lot of predominant Black individuals. So it led to a lot of intermarriages and Filipinx Black children. Another notable community or family is the Jenkins family, which was the first to settle in Seattle in 1909. And they were Filipinx and Black. And a very historical family is actually Supreme Court Justice Thurwell Marshall. He married a Filipinx woman, Cecilia Suat, and had two sons named John and Thurgood Jr. So he was a Supreme Court Justice, and he had Filipinx Black kids, which is really cool. And I don't think a lot of people actually knew that. So one of the most really big or like notable examples of solidarity with the Black and Filipinx community is the Philippine-American War. So in 1999, the Filipinx fought against American colonialism and for their independence. So within the Black community in America, they actually supported our independence and opposed America's attempt to colonize us. Within their newsletters and just talking within themselves, they would outwardly say that they really opposed the United States and that they really supported us for independence, especially since they went through the same struggle of being oppressed by America. The soldiers themselves within the war also felt very used by the United States. And when they heard white soldiers refer to Filipinx as the N-word, they were very disgusted. Therefore, they would later stand in solidarity with the Filipinx freedom fighters. So these are a few pictures I want to include. So this is Justice Thurgood Marshall, so sorry. And then the Seattle family, the Jenkins family, and these were the soldiers that would later stand in solidarity. The final historical allyship I wanted to share was the fight for ethnic studies. This fight for ethnic studies arose from the civil rights movement from the 60s to the 70s. With the fight for ethnic studies, BPICU Americans came together in San Francisco to demand the creation of ethnic studies. So at SFSU, I'm pretty sure they're known for ethnic studies and their Filipinx studies. As well as this very much emphasized how Black and Filipinx individuals put aside their differences and just joined together for the importance that we must learn about the perspectives of individual cultures, both in and outside of the US. So these are a few pictures. You can see that there are prominent Filipinx individuals, prominent Black individuals, and yep. So besides our historical allyship with the Black community, why else should we be an ally? Even though I'm pretty sure most of us are allies here. These are so we can convince others or just look back a little bit deeper on why we are allies. So it's important to know that we are very highly influenced by the Black culture. So immigrating, for the older generations, immigrating to America, Black culture was the closest thing to ourselves in media. Although we also have our Southeast Asian identity, many of us have not claimed it because of the Asian exclusion that we've experienced for many years. So Black culture is still considered a very strong representation for Filipinx. And now that is the 21st century, and we do have Filipinx stars in media in like big roles, there's still a prominent lack of genuine representation in mainstream media. So two big examples are music and sports. First off with music, if you've been to like a Filipinx gathering, a party, you know that we play a lot of rock and roll, R&B, and hip hop. Even one of my titas actually named her son after the Black artist Prince. I think that definitely highlights how big of a deal the Black community has made on just a family within the Filipinx community. We love, again, a lot of us are also in hip hop dance groups or in dance groups, and we take a lot of dances that derive from Black culture. So sports, again, what games do Filipinx watch the most? Basketball, which is of course created by the Black community. And we look up to Black artists and Black athletes like Kobe, Beyonce, Michael Jordan. Some more recent artists would be like Kendrick Lamar. And yeah, that's very big. We are very highly influenced. And I'm pretty sure you guys can probably look back and have your favorite Black artist, or one of your favorite songs might even be by a Black artist. So besides Black influence, besides historical allyship, why else should we be an ally? Well, we share various similarities within our communities. First off, we have very strong family dynamics, and we both have struggled with discrimination and racism, especially in America. Without the civil rights movement, which was obviously led by Black Americans, and without their activism leadership in general, we wouldn't have many of our freedoms today and privileges that we enjoy. And lastly, it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, of course. No one should have to fear their lives every day. And if you were to kind of put yourself in their shoes, you would realize like everything that they've been through. It's very uncomparable to what we've faced. So human rights are also not political. Just want to highlight that. And just remember, you wouldn't want this to happen to you or your children. So this is my favorite quote by Angela Davis, where she says, "In a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist." I think this perfectly summarizes what it is to be an ally. We definitely can claim that we are not racist, but are we moving towards becoming anti-racist, removing all of our internalized cultural practices, reflecting, spreading the word, continuing the fight? So while we all express allyship, we tend to have a lot of ways that we do it, and we all do it differently. I want to be honest. We all either go through social media, we reach out one-on-one, but however, there are some detrimental ways that we reach out, and we don't know that's actually detrimental to the community. So from my perspective and how I've participated, these are the do's and don'ts I've created. So the first do is head to the web. It's as simple as taking your time to search. Oh, sorry, I have to admit someone. Okay. It's as simple as taking your time to just search up what Black Lives Matter is, It's as simple as like searching up like systematic racism and just catching up on the social justice issues that BIPOC communities are currently facing. However, within this, like we might be waiting for someone to tell us what is wrong. In this case, like it's important to remember that it's not anyone's responsibility, especially your Black peers' responsibility, to tell you what's going on. To be an ally, you're taking your own time and effort to show your genuine support for the group. Do partake in making a difference. Within this is like mostly what you do as an ally. You would try to spread around informational pieces, usually through social media. I see a lot of people posting through their stories, and I do that as well, or have a link in their bio. Sign petitions, donate, and attend protests, obviously only if you can. Remember that your platform, no matter what, will always create a change, whether it's going to be in your small group of friends or family or within different organizations. No matter what, always utilize your platform because your voice matters. Don't participate in performative activism, or another term is slacktivism. Being an ally, there's never enough activism. You always feel like you can be doing more, especially when the community is still not asking for help, but still needs supporters and to uplift their message. So a big example of performative activism was Blackout Tuesday, which originated for the music community to not post any new releases in solidarity. However, it was misconstrued. So people were just posting a black square. And how I saw it was that most people who posted the black square, they did not repost any BLM information before or after that. And that was a huge kind of like slap to the face for Black Lives Matter. And it filled up the entire hashtag with all these black squares and did not promote petitions that needed to be signed or voices that needed to be heard. So performative activism, a big no. And we all can maybe like accidentally be performative activists. And it's just important that we look back and realize that and that we stop. So do call in your friends and family. By calling in instead of calling out, calling in is asking more why. Why aren't you an ally, or why don't you believe in this movement? Calling out has a more negative connotation where in a sense you're shaming them, like, oh, you definitely should, like you're a bad person if you don't. When we call in, we just want to acknowledge the toxicity that is kind of around us and in our culture, and then like point it out for our friends and family. We want to use the power of suggestion to convince them. And I know communicating with families is very hard, but we'll go into that more with communication. But the biggest don't, which I'm definitely at fault for at times, I've learned from it, of course, is forcing your views upon others. Although it pains us that those around us do not either support the movement or have the same opinion as us, we can't force it upon them because it's ingenuine and it will cause performative activism on their part. It sucks, honestly, that some people, especially like those we love, do not either support Black Lives Matter or they still have like problematic behavior. But it's important that like we don't force it upon them to join the movement, but rather just be like, you should join the movement, and this is why. However, when it comes to the point, if they do or they don't, that's on you whether or not you want to keep trying or you want to like remove them from your lives and such, which is different. There's kind of different, but just yeah. So another do is self-reflection. Being an ally, we mostly think that we are just spreading a message and uplifting Black voices and talking to other people. But the biggest thing that we should also do is talk to ourselves. So reflect back on our own behaviors and views that can be unknowingly problematic. And just by doing this, we move towards becoming anti-racist than rather just not being racist. But to reflect, remember, this is not about you. So although we can relate to the experiences of racism, remember it is incomparable to what Black Americans are definitely facing today. So from allyship, which I hope we've all participated in. So if you're already an ally, you could be asking yourself, what more can I do? The thing is, the fight never stops, so keep on going. Continue to uplift and support Black voices. Listen and promote what the individuals of the Black community have to say. So again, like reposting and just like putting in your funds and effort into the movement. Again, like I saw that people mentioned that they're supporting Black businesses. Even though you're kind of supporting one individual, you're still making an impact onto the movement. No matter what, again, whatever you put towards the movement creates change. Although you're not going to end racism or you're not going to like change the entire community around you, creating change is still a big step forward, and it definitely creates a healthier environment for you. So now let's jump into the mental health aspect. Can everyone like type in the chat which of these 4 colors represents them today? I will wait. But just from, I know these 4 colors are kind of broad and it's like, oh, why are we doing this? But from red, yellow, blue, and green, please just type in like what color represents your mood. So red, green, yellow, lime. So I'm gonna guess green from that. Green, red, blue. I want to say yellow. So lime sauce. Okay, yellow. Okay, love the responses. Thank you everyone who replied. And it's kind of like Among Us colors, right? Like which one's the imposter? Well, none of them are the imposter. So these colors actually derived from the Harvard Mood Meter. So these are like moods that like would, I guess, somewhat suggest or correlate to your colors. So if you were feeling red, you might have felt like maybe like more anxious, mad, or worried. Yellow, you might be feeling like very energetic, brave, and blue, you might be feeling a little bit more like sad or just like more chillax. You know, these are more of just like broad like blanket moods, and there's definitely like a bigger scale that goes into each color a little bit more. And then green, feeling calm, and you know, but don't like let this like dictate your mood, of course. Just remember that like I felt like if I were to show you guys this first, you guys would have like chose what would best make you guys like kind of look good. But it's good that you guys were just able to be open and honest with your feelings, and that you guys didn't reject your feelings after I presented this. So let me see. Mental health. So mental health revolves around our psychological, emotional, and social well-being. So why is mental health important? And how does it even relate to our topic of allyship that we just talked about? So mental health directly influences the way we think, feel, and act. And I included this like really cute little like feelings chart. So like, as you guys are saying, like what color represents your mood, that says like, that doesn't say a lot about like your entire like personality or feelings. It just shows like, it might influence the way that you've been acting today, like, you know, and all this other things. So how does it even relate to allyship at all? Well, I broke it down into 3 components, which we'll dive into. So the first one would be knowing when to press pause, coming face to face with Filipinx culture and history, and combating internalized toxic cultural practices. They all seem very much like a lot and very kind of scary things to like look into, but trust me, I will break it down, and it's not as scary as you think. So first off, knowing when to take a pause, I want to note that when we press pause as allies, that those who are actually being oppressed have the right to feel any way that they want, whether it's angry or it's calm. They have, it's on them whatever they want to feel, and we don't have a say on like how to dictate how they should. So remember, as we practice allyship, we learn about situations that can cause us to be frustrated, angry, and we learn about a lot of painful situations. But because we're allies and we're spreading a message that we really want people to come on our side, we must remain open-minded, kind, and compassionate. So as I mentioned before, we often feel like we could be doing more because there's never an enough. However, that can become really exhausting emotionally and physically, especially if you might be attending a lot of protests. And that, like with COVID and everything, we're all dealing with something on our own time. But remember that like, it's crucial that we take a pause in being an ally. So it's not selfish to take a break at all. We take a break for our own mental health because mental health also matters. But I'm going to emphasize this really, I'm going to emphasize this. Pressing pause is not withdrawing from being an ally. And although I think people think that that's why a lot of people don't want to press pause, because they feel like they're going to be kind of like called out, like, oh, why aren't you reposting this information, all this stuff. But just remember that just pressing pause is just like, you can still repost an information or you can still sign a petition, but still take time, just put time more into yourself. Within that, you're still pressing a pause, So within pressing pause, that means participating in self-care. So please, everyone, tell me what's your favorite self-care activity. You can type in the chat. If anyone wants to say your favorite self-care activity, that would be greatly appreciated as well. My favorite self-care activity is just like watching movies, especially right now because it's Halloween. I love Halloween movies so much. So Tiana said face mask, Alyssa said sleeping, Kathleen said taking a walk, skincare, face mask, ooh, yoga, and playing with my dog. Oh, my ate said my daughter and I love to paint, buying big blankets. Oh, yes, retail therapy. I didn't include that because I'm kind of a shopaholic, so I didn't want to fuel myself within my self-care tips. Ooh, music. I love music. Okay. Ooh, movies and food. Okay. Oh, sorry. So thank you for everyone who replied. So here are a few self-care tips. These are just like things that I partake in or would like to partake in, and it's like my own little like reminder list. But take one day a week for yourself. But I know since like school and everything that's going on, at least try to have at least like one break a day, if not one day to yourself. Remember to stay hydrated. That's super important. Don't forget to sleep. Sleep is good for you. Talk to a loved one. Reach out if you can. It's always nice to be able to just like talk to someone, like some random topic. Reach out to a mental health professional if you feel like you need to. Sometimes they're easier like to vent to, and just do something you love. But most importantly, relax in any way possible. So those are a few self-care tips. Now let's jump into the second component, which is definitely a little bit more like scary, not scary, but a big thing to take in when you're coming face to face. So coming face to face with Filipinx culture and history, as a people, we've suffered colonization for a total of 381 years, about 333 with the Spanish, and then around 50 years with America. So the effects deeply reside in our roots, and they've passed on from generation to generation. So a big term that like people use, or a term to just generalize like how colonization has affected us, is colonial mentality. So colonial mentality is the belief that white is superior. Therefore, a vast majority of Filipinx aspire to be white or aspire to have like the lighter complexion. Some examples of colonial mentality are the use of whitening products. So like papaya soap, I bet a lot of you have heard of that. Pinching your nose or someone pinching your nose. And just in general, like sadly feeling inferior and shame for being Filipinx. So colonial mentality has caused toxic cultural practices of anti-Blackness. And those toxic practices being racism and colorism. So during colonization, there was a lot of ties to classism. The Spanish colonizers implemented this concept that dark-skinned Filipinx belonged in the lower class and working class, in the workforce. While those who are of mixed race or had lighter complexions were put into upper classes, they were treated with luxury and got to enjoy like a lot of their law privileges. Another more modern reason why we still have racism and colorism within our culture is that Western media has promoted this standard of beauty where white and certain facial body features are praised. So that's why like that thing comes in why we use whitening soaps and why we pinch our nose. Also, how like when we have Filipinx representation in mainstream media, they're usually of mixed race or lighter individuals. For an example, like although I love like Haley Steinfeld, that's like one of the like Filipinx icons, love her. She is half white and she is half Filipinx, and she's kind of like promoting this like one like kind of like, oh, what we should look like, even though like she doesn't intentionally do it, it's still sometimes individuals in our community see it like that. Also, it's easy to believe what we see on the news or social media, even if it's fake. Although this kind of like stereotypical, Filipinx are like known for gossiping, or at least word spreads around like wildfire. So even if one post isn't exactly true, if a tita or a tito believes it's real, it will definitely get passed around in a group chat. It'll get passed around to the kids. And even if it's not what we believe in, or it's such a malicious depiction of like the Black community or any BIPOC community, we tend to like just like take their word for it, because it's media. Like the news can't be wrong or fake, but it can, right? Another thing with coming face to face with Filipinx culture and history is the stigma against mental health. So how does like mental health even come with like facing Filipinx culture? Well, because while we were once freed from colonization, we couldn't risk being colonized again, as well as older generations experienced extreme hardships when immigrating to America. So it promoted this idea that we always had to be strong and put up a front. And although that's what we did as a community, it infiltrated into our households and family. Therefore, there was kind of this stigma against mental health that was created, where that if we suffered with mental disorders, or try to like even just say like, oh, I feel like I have anxiety, or I feel like I'm suffering with depression, that is often that we just either choose to suppress it, or it gets brushed off because it's a sign of weakness, or it's not a physical health risk. And many of us, again, like we suppress it, we don't even bring it up, or we don't want to think about it, because there's like, we could get pushed, turned down, and like even kicked out of the family. So we're afraid of like disapproval, and we fear like just ruining our family reputation. So another quote by Angela Davis, I kind of like only quote her within this because she's like so inspirational to me, but I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. So in order to create change for these like kind of toxic and cultural practices, we need to find ways to combat them. Change definitely starts with us. Although like we cannot change our history, we can move forward and try to change what's going on right now. So now let's go on to the third component, which is combating these toxic cultural practices. So as I mentioned before, we cannot change the past, but we can learn from it and implement new values for future generations and ourselves. So two key things that we can do as combat is communication and reflection. Remember that we cannot continue dismissing mental health and excusing anti-Blackness behavior from older people in our generations and within ourselves. So this is a video I wanted to show everyone, and the main guy in the video is actually Dante. I forgot his last name, I'm so sorry, but the voice of Zuko, which kind of makes this like video so like fun to listen to as well. But it summarizes basically anti-Blackness in Filipinx culture. So I'm gonna play with everyone. Yes, Dante Bosco, love him.
Anti-Blackness is like Filipino food. Some of it is found in our colonized past, and it's always been present growing up in our family traditions, our community culture, and even in the media we consume.
There's this idea, particularly in the Philippines, that if you're darker, you're working out in the fields, right? If you're light-skinned, you don't have to work in the field. So there's classism that is tied into the color of one's skin.
Filipinos are naturally dark. In fact, the indigenous people of the Philippines valued their dark skin as spiritual and celebrated through religious ceremonies.
How do we value dark skin now?
Am I beautiful even if I'm dark?
Why are we told that lighter skin makes us more beautiful?
If your standard of beauty is white, then how do you look at me?
Is my nose too big?
Mom, you better talk to Dante. He said when he makes money, he's gonna fix his nose.
Yep, that's me and my mom, apparently quoting me. Have you ever been a part of seemingly harmless, funny banter? Anti-blackness is a learned behavior.
When we say we're just old-fashioned, it's widely used, whether we know it or not, as in to excuse our anti-blackness behavior. At a family dinner, my grandfather was sitting across the room from me. We were talking about having kids, and he said, just as long as they're not black. And it was even more alarming because it was excused right away, because Grandpa's a good man.
Can good people be anti-black?
Sometimes even good people can carry anti-black behaviors, and it has to do with the culture we grew up in.
Anti-black attitudes can be as small as pointing out one's darkness as a problem rather than a beautiful trait.
The role of anti-blackness is beyond pervasive in our families and our communities. So much so that most of us are silent about it.
Why did I grow up feeling like I had to change myself to fit in?
The assimilation factor that many of our Filipino families adopted when they came to the States made it even harder for them, for us, shoot, for you, to look in the mirror and say goodbye to the whiteness that we see them.
This is about fully examining and interrogating ourselves first, then our family, friends, and community.
These conversations must begin at home, not just on social media where your inner circle already agrees with you, but with family members who might not share the same perspectives when it comes to race and privilege.
We as Filipinos have the privilege that we will never face the same racism as Black people do. We need to recognize that privilege and acknowledge that our struggles are tied to Black struggles.
Where do you think our civil rights came from?
Filipinos should care because our very rights and freedoms as Filipino Americans are a direct result of the Black liberation movements of the past and of the present.
You can take action on a larger scale by supporting the Movement for Black Lives, the Bulasan Center for Filipino Studies, Lead Filipino, AAPI Women Lead, Kabataan Alliance, and the National Alliance for Filipino Concerns, or NAFCON. By support, I do mean money. I also mean people power. I also mean your voice and your story. Bring your lolos and your lolas, your manangs and your manongs. Bring them all to the party. Let's learn together. And if you are Black and Filipinx like me, tell your story, at least to your family. It is 100% on you to put that noise, the systemic racism behind you, and walk into a more loving, accepting version of you who's ready to co-create a brand new world with the rest of us.
So here we are. We have the ability to be the ancestors that our descendants will look to for guidance, to be on the right side of history, to be the first discussion against whitening soaps, to be that constant affirmation to our children that their noses, hair, skin, and body types are beautiful. And when that time comes, and believe me it will if it hasn't already, that we're faced with a question by our Black brothers and sisters, does my life matter? What will you say? Black lives matter.
Do you see me differently because I openly support Black lives?
Do you only want Black music, but not Black people?
Don't we all just want our kids to be safe?
Why are we told that lighter skin makes us more beautiful?
If I'm Black, does that make me less Filipino?
Okay, so that video definitely summarizes everything I've been kind of talking about earlier. It's very powerful. I agree with you, Tita Mila, and that's why I really wanted to show it to everyone here today. Can someone either unmute yourselves? I really want someone to mute themselves for this one, or like type in chat, just at least like one person, like what is your biggest takeaway from like this video right now? I'll say for me, it was just like, even though we know that there are many good people in our family, that they still express anti-Blackness behavior, and that we cannot, like, yeah, that's how I got the biggest thing of like, we cannot continue to dismiss it or excuse it. So anyone, what's your biggest takeaway from this video right now?
I could say something.
Yes, please, Ellen.
Hi, Desiree. So I think a takeaway for me is the fact that we're so used to old narratives here, and I think now we have the opportunity to change that narrative to not only for ourselves, our own generation right now, but for others to come, you know, and just what was brought up in the video on how we see, um, I guess, with the big issue here is colorism, you know, and just being able to embrace our brown skin. So that's my takeaway.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to share their biggest takeaway? Once, twice, third time. Anyone? Okay, I'm gonna read.
Oh, you got somebody, girl.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it. So she said that.
Who unmuted his mic.
Oh, okay. Please share, and I'll read this. Thank you, Ayan. You can go share.
Thank you so much, Desiree. What I took away from this beautiful video that was prepared was that we need to embrace our culture no matter where, no matter how, in every angle, and mainly just knowing and researching our history, our culture would be a powerful tool for all of us to know for our future, as well as for our future to take away with our children and their children's children. And I think that's a beautiful thing overall.
Thank you so much for sharing. I totally agree. I'm going to read this comment that I got in the chat because I just thought it was really good. So Jessie said, this presentation has been very insightful for me. I'm now just realizing that my hatred and insecurity of my nose and hair growing up and even now is rooted in anti-Blackness and not just insecurity. I grew up around my family constantly commenting on how I should fix my nose one day and how my hair is so much prettier when I'm straight. Also, I want to say, Kim said, that we must be the change we want to see in the world and curtail the anti-Blackness, and that is fostered with Filipinx culture to prevent our future generations from spreading hate. So thank you guys so much for sharing. And I really like, Jessie, that you were able to share such a personal experience. I know that's kind of scary, especially with some people that you don't even know in here, but definitely shows just how much it still affects us till this day, and that we are still have to unlearn these toxic cultural practices, and that we now just are even realizing them. But that's where change starts, is when you realize it. And definitely if we do want to be the change, we definitely have to start getting rid of the anti-Blackness behavior and excusing it. So let me see. Okay. So the first way we can combat it, as I mentioned, was communication. I first want to go over two very strong values within Filipinx culture. So the first one being respect your elders. So people when respecting your elders, we've kind of take away that whatever they say is right. So that's why kind of I was saying when Jess was saying oh, your hair is much prettier and straighter, you kind of really take that because you just respect their comments and you believe what they're saying is correct. And most times with respecting your elders, you kind of disregard your own opinion, whether it's about yourself or an issue. And you just kind of don't have a voice anymore in your family. Another thing is education. So with education, we are told that we should finish high school, we should finish college, and that will give us a better life. So obviously that's definitely pushed all of us and give us very good careers, and it's very true. However, to talk about these new learned topics, to put our education into use, and also mentioning our mental health to them, they're seen as very taboo topics or disrespectful. And most times that leads to us being turned down. However, because like we know we're different generations and such, we need to still work through communicating through these differences for the sake of ourselves and the future generation. So I like this little like animation I drew. It says like listen to our youth. Very cute and very true. So conversing 101, tama na po. So tama na po means like when you're talking to like an older relative, it means like that's enough. And I think this is like kind of how we're all feeling inside, especially when it's either a someone talking about like our skin color, our nose, or like just something that was like kind of like fallacious about a movement that's going on, like Black Lives Matter. We kind of just like, that's enough. Like it's so hurtful to feel this. So in order to like start these conversations, because they're very, it's very hard to just like be like, let's talk about this. I've given a few pointers on how we should be prepared before and during these conversations. So the first one is there's a right time and place to have your conversations. Remember, being an ally, we are emotionally exhausted. We feel a lot of anger. So we need to make sure we're in the right mindset before even beginning our conversations. So although like, remember, like it's easy that for us to get turned down and we will hear a lot of things that we don't agree with. And it could lead to us just either like outbursting or saying something that we didn't mean to say and completely making our loved one not want to be a part of the movement. So make sure like we're open to whatever they're gonna say and that we can take it with like a grain of salt. Remember, be prepared, because in this sense, again, with like respecting your elders and that whole like notion that your elders are correct, you might have to debate with your family members. So make sure you have your information ready. Research whatever you need to have this conversation. A biggest thing is also using language and examples that they can relate to. So for examples like food, celebrities, sports, movies, and TV shows. Like for me and like my dad, he asked me questions about like Black Lives Matter and such because he's very into basketball, and the NBA uses their network or their platform to promote what's going on. And that's just a really good way of like how also a network uses their voice, and how being like that use of like persuasion and kind of like fitting to their views can really make a difference. So remember, although we are talking, we need to listen to what they're saying. So listen and acknowledge where your loved one is coming from, especially those in the older generation. They experience racism and hardships coming here. But even though like they've experienced that and they might be like, oh, like I understand what's going on, but like I went through the same thing. Don't let that like guilt or discourage you from continuing the conversation, because it's very important that we to continue to try to like get to them. Like, although like I understand where you're coming from, Black Lives Matter is way more than this and this. Also like saying like using like their cultural like experience to push them to our side, right? Like, oh, you experienced this, like, so did the Black community. And lastly, but not least, is don't give up. So I know that's that term. Sometimes like they would say like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. However, it's like kind of scientifically proven that you can teach an old dog new tricks because they're more obedient as they get older. So you can also use that as a rebuttal for a debate. And remember that like the past affects the future, and therefore that's why we're here, and that we will one day be the past for the future generation. So whatever we do will affect our kids and their kids. So don't give up, although it is very hard. And remember to just always have courage, and to do this when you feel the most comfortable, because again, like it's just a very like hard topic. So from this, these are some these are some like common statements you may get when like conversing about like Black Lives Matter, social injustice. So all lives matter. That's I even feel so weird just saying it. Although like that is true. I think I just accidentally put myself like sorry. Even though that is true, we need to always like, a few things you could do is like explain, identify, and I wanted to emphasize this analogy when it's someone's birthday, you don't say that it's your birthday on that day, especially if your birthday is like in February or something. So that's like an important thing that like, yeah, like being like pro-Black or like promoting Black Lives Matter does not mean we're anti-Filipinx or anti-white or like we're anti like all these other cultures. It's just that Black lives do matter and it needs to be heard and agreed with. So remember, like, also people might say like, I'm not into politics. Human rights are not political. And if you're not very much in for like a conversation, a big thing you do is just like watch a documentary or some show with them. I suggest The 13th by Ava DuVernay, which goes into the systematic oppression and racism that Black people face and the prison industrial complex. And the last thing is, but they're rioting and looting. So with this, like you can explain like the peacefulness within the protests that begin and how police brutality comes into this. Identify like how there's no right or wrong way to protest and that we as allies should just support whatever way they choose. And remind them that stores and goods can be replaced, but a life cannot be given back. So although like we are very sad that mom and pop shops get affected, we need to like if you want to support the mom and pop shops, then put your funds into them. But also remember that we cannot get the lives back of like Black individuals like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and that with these protests that it's just spreading that message. So conversing 101, this goes into more with mental health. So bahala na is more of like I heard it in an NPR interview where this girl was talking about her parents and they're talking about someone who actually just lost a loved one and they said bahala na. So it's kind of saying it's in God's hands now, like this will work itself out. But with mental health, it's a lot about understanding and addressing the issue, being honest and not being afraid. So by those topics, I mean, we need to understand our disconnect because we could have very formal relationships with our parents. So, you know, like we're not very emotionally in touch with them. Therefore, like we need to address the disconnect and understand it so we can move forward. The biggest thing is just being honest and vulnerable with your parents or your family about what you're going through. Just tell them how you're truly feeling and that they're like, that school may be stressing you out or like something in your family may be stressing you out. And the biggest thing is just don't be afraid. Although this is also very scary and you do not want to get your feelings more hurt or put yourself down a deeper rabbit hole. Remember that despite the disconnect and stigmas, your family does care about you. Especially within Filipinx households, it's just hard to really express that. But this conversation could really open up some new doors. So common statements you may hear when conversing even about mental health, which can be like a little soft topic, is like when they say you're ungrateful. So explain how your mental health isn't focused on materials and identify the roots of your issues, because honestly most times it's not about like them not getting something for you or where you are physically, but kind of like what you're just experiencing like within your culture, within school. Another statement we may hear is like, oh, pray it away or I'll pray for you. So though we value our spirituality, we value Christianity, we value being Catholic, sometimes like what we're going through, because mental health is also, or mental disorders are also like a chemical imbalance, it may not correlate with what you're going through and it may just like hurt you even more. So identify that you may need like actual like mental health professional help, like reaching out to like a psychiatrist or psychologist or like going to a counselor. So with having these topics, we do have to deal with an aftermath. And it either ends up being very amazing and the best for us or the worst. And although we do want the best, we could end up with having to continue to try. So if it ends up the best, remember to continue to keep them updated on current events and inform them on ways they can help, like send them links or petitions to sign, encourage them to vote. It's also a big thing. And if the worst does happen, which is very unfortunate, Remember to keep trying, and that if it is in terms of mental health, there are multiple resources where you can seek self-help for yourself. Remember, like, just because they turn you down doesn't mean you should close that door with them. Continue to have an open mind, and if it doesn't work out with one person, you can definitely reach out to other people and you could persuade them to come on the sides of Black Lives Matter. So remember that to continue to always communicate, and communication is key. Although that is heard so many times, is definitely true. So while we do communicate with others, we need to communicate with ourselves, and how we do that is through reflection. So our internalized toxic cultural practices have altered our perspective on ourselves and the world we live in. Therefore, we should look back, unlearn, and replace. So what do I mean by those like 3 words? So first, let's talk about looking back. So looking back has to do with talking about our colonial mentality. And there are actually quizzes that exist that could tell you like how much colonial mentality has affected you. And I went through a few, and these are a few questions that I got from them. So would I like my skin lighter than it is right now? Do I prefer my American culture more? And am I proud of being Filipinx? And knowing how to answer that now, but like answering that on your own could really tell you how you feel about yourself and how much like colonialism has like gone to our generation now, or your generation. So this is a way of looking back on our effects of our history, and we do fall victim to colonial mentality without even knowing it. So therefore, we should unlearn and replace this mentality to remove it from our future generations. So unlearning is to perceive, think, or behave differently when existing beliefs and assumptions are in place. So those beliefs would be like anti-Blackness and mental health stigma. So remember, to unlearn is to relearn new information and to replace it. And therefore, we can implement these new values. So these are examples of what I would replace anti-Blackness and mental health stigmas with, which is that dark skin is beautiful. And with that, also explaining how the indigenous people of the Philippines very much value their dark skin. Just being proud to be Filipinx, beliefs in equality and justice, how vulnerability is completely okay and that all feelings are valid. So implementing these new practices will pave a healthier path for the future Filipinx generations, and including ourselves. So these are a few resources and recommendations. I'm running a little bit on time. So if anyone would love to see this list later, just let us know. But these are resources that I wanted to promote. These are documentaries that I think are so amazing to watch, especially if you're not a reader. And if you are a reader, then these are a few reading sources. I just really wanted to quickly say, like, there's this book club called No Name Reads, and it's actually created by a Black musical artist called No Name. And right now she's focusing on Black empowerment. So I think that's a great way of digging deeper and being interested in allyship. So to end off our presentation, remember to be kind to your mind, to be proud to be Filipinx, and that Black Lives Matter. Change starts with you, and that eventually when we do become the past generations, our effects will lead on to our households and in general the generation. Remember that also, because most of us are probably Filipinx American, that being Filipinx American does not make us any less Filipinx. So thank you so much, salamat, and happy Filipinx American History Month. And that concludes my presentation.
Great job, Desiree. Thank you. I'm following up Desiree's presentation just to kind of emphasize some things. And then I think at the end, we're going to do the Q&A. So, right. Let's see.
Oh, wait. How do I stop screen sharing? It'll just change.
Oh, I think you just press stop somewhere. It should look like where if there's like a little bar or something.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I think once I started mine, it stopped hers.
Oh yeah, that's better too.
That works.
Give it up for Dr. Navarro. She's our next
Yeah.
presenter. Woo!
Okay, no, I am not going to be as animated as Desiree, but great job. So I think that the partnership between Desiree being the younger generation and I definitely represent the older generation. So I'm probably older than some of your parents. So I wanted to be able to kind of um, convey that message in terms of really my whole point of what I am is just going to give you my own personal story and highlighting a lot of the things that Desiree had shared with you earlier today. So I wanted to, when she talked about self-reflection, there's a way that you can map out your racial identity and be able to start looking at where you're at. And again, I want to encourage you all that if anything else, we always, when we do these presentation, we always hope that there's parents that, who attend these, but you can always share it with them. And then hopefully, there's that kind of planting the seed with them. So I wanted to let you know about my story in terms of my, kind of the journey I went through in looking at my own racial identity. So here's sort of like a framework, right? So Nikko earlier told you I'm a professor, so I can't help but give you a little bit of a framework. So this comes from a book that's called Racial Healing Book. So as Desiree already mentioned, it's part of us being able to reflect on